Hello and welcome to the Lights Out podcast, the official podcast of the Formula One Vavel. I'm joined by Callum Owen, Callum McAvoy, and Matt. I am Joshua, and today we're going to be talking ahead of the new season. We'll be giving some predictions and making some wild guesses as to one shock thing that may happen this season. So let's get into it, and we'll start with drivers. So Matt, sort of, where do you think who's going to finish bottom of the drivers' championship this season?
Yeah, so I've gone for bottom of the championship. I think it was quite an easy one for me. I've gone for Nikita Mazepin. I think with what Gunter Steiner has said to the media during testing, he sort of said things like, I don't care where we finish in the championship this year. I just want my drivers to learn as much as possible for the new regulations in 2022. So yeah, I've gone with Mazepin last. I just think the way he was in Formula 2, he's obviously the lowest ranked Formula 2 driver coming in this year. So yeah, I went with Mazepin bottom.
Yeah, I think everyone collectively agree on that one, or sort of.
Yeah, 100%.
I agree.
Yeah.
Perfect. And sort of, Matt, you want to lead this one next? Sort of, again, 19th.
Yeah, so for 19th, I think this may be a bit of a controversial one because I've gone with Antonio Giovinazzi. He's a driver for me that I don't really think has a lot about him, to be honest. You never really see him making headlines for any sort of reason. And I think I wouldn't say he's overrated, but I think people think he's probably better than he is. But I wanted to see what kind of Callum M thought of that one, because he gave a little bit of a smile as if to say, don't agree with that one.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think Giovinazzi probably isn't as good as other drivers on the grid. Yeah, I've got him 15th in my table. I just feel he's going to have a good year. He looked pretty promising last year. I think he finished ahead of Raikkonen in the end, which is not an easy thing to do. And I just think he's going to get better and better. And, sometimes lesser drivers have more luck than, say, better drivers like George Russell or Mick Schumacher or Latifi. So, I think Giovinazzi will finish higher, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did finish 19th, as you say.
And Callum, the other Callum Owen, what are your thoughts on Giovinazzi? 19th, is that too low for me?
Yeah, I went a completely different way with it. I've gone for sort of the 20th Nikita Mazepin and 19th Mick Schumacher. I just think the Haas car will be that poor this year that they don't score points and find themselves at the table. And like Callum, I found myself putting Giovinazzi sort of in that fight for the best of the Class C drivers. I ended up with him 16th behind only George Russell. I think it's vital for him to keep his seat this year. And the way to do that is by beating Kimi Raikkonen. I think this is the only year that he has that chance.
How likely, Josh, do you think it is that Giovinazzi is going to be able to get one over on Raikkonen? Because obviously Raikkonen got a lot of experience, the most experienced driver on the grid, the oldest driver on the grid as well. Should he be expected to beat Raikkonen, considering how old kind of and maybe not out of practice, but maybe Raikkonen maybe getting towards the end of his career might start to be a little bit rusty now.
Yeah, Kimi's definitely like the veteran of the field, of the sport. But I think you can't look past the fact that he's raced for Ferrari and he's been successful with them. And I know they've sort of brought in drivers now. Leclerc came in, replaced him, Sainz is there now, but you don't get to be a Ferrari driver without having some quality about you. I've got Giovinazzi 18th and Kimi 15th, so I don't think Alfa are going to have a great season, but yeah, Kimi should outperform him, even though logically, historically, it doesn't really go in that favour.
So we've kind of covered Alfa Romeo there in terms of where we think they're going to finish overall. We started talking about Haas and Nikita Mazepin. I've got Mick Schumacher in 17th. Where are the two Haas drivers going to finish? Everybody agreed Mazepin last in the championship. I think one of you said you put Schumacher 19th. What are your thoughts on that, Callum?
18th for Schumacher. Yeah, I think Haas are in a bad position going into this season for sure. But I think Schumacher's got a lot of promise. We know what his dad did, obviously, and he's come through Formula 3 and Formula 2 very well. So Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he's like, but I don't hold hopes for a higher finish than 18th.
Okay, so we'll carry on then going through sort of team by team, discussing the two drivers. Next up, so we've done a bit of Haas, we've done Alfa Romeo. We'll just finish Alfa Romeo with Kimi Raikkonen. Obviously, I've kind of said that he's a bit of a veteran and might be a bit rusty, and then I have gone and put him 15th in the Drivers' Championship. So I've contradicted myself there a little bit. What do you think about Kimi, Callum O?
See, I think the perfect time for Kimi to step away would have been at the end of this season, because towards the end of the season, it looked as though Giovinazzi had the edge on him. Obviously, out-qualified him, went down to the final race. And I just feel like this year he will struggle, and it should be his last year in the sport. I think the longer he stays, the longer he risks damaging his reputation. And I don't think that'll be helped this year, because I do predict that Antonio Giovinazzi will beat him. It will be close. There won't be many points in it. But it'll be, for me, Kimi Raikkonen 17th and Antonio Giovinazzi 16th.
Cool. So moving on to Williams, who are kind of the best, I think, out of that bottom three, and by the looks of it, maybe have the best car out of that bottom three. Josh is sort of shaking his head a little bit there. He's not too sure about that one. First of all, before we talk about Williams overall, I want to talk about Nicolas Latifi. Obviously, it was his first season last year in Formula One. Did okay. Didn't really do anything sort of magical that was, out of this world. Where do you think Nicolas Latifi is going to finish this season, Joshua? I've got him down in 17th. Would you agree with that?
No, I think he's going to struggle. I think you look at some of the drivers coming up, and I know most of them have gone to the higher teams, or seem to have performed better than Williams did last season. I've got him 19th. I just think he's going to struggle. I think George Russell's going to have a bit of motivation about him to get that Mercedes seat next year. And I think that's what's going to drive him, and he'll score some points in the Williams. But I don't know. I feel sorry for Latifi. Sort of, he's just there, isn't he? Everyone talks about George Russell, but it's never, Latifi's going to get the Mercedes seat, or he's going to go to McLaren or something. So I think he's going to struggle.
Yeah, I think we probably would all be in agreement with that. I think I've gone for a little bit too much. I just think with those Haas drivers below him, he maybe could be the best of the rest, probably in your guys' thoughts. I still think Giovinazzi is going to finish in that 19th position. Let's talk about his teammate then. George Russell got his chance in the Mercedes car last year. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong in Bahrain. Is he going to have some success in Bahrain this time out? Is he going to be instantly in the points? Personally, I don't think so. I think he will score points on a couple of occasions this year. Callum M, I want to get your thoughts on this one. I've gone for Russell in 16th in the championship. Like I said, it will score a couple of points on a couple of occasions, but I can't see him setting the world alight this year. What do you think, Callum?
Yeah, I have him 16th as well. The big question is going to be how quick is the Williams, and truth be told, we don't know, because they're under new management now. Obviously, Claire Williams and Frank Williams have stepped aside as of last year. The problem with Williams is they've scored 1 point over the last 2 seasons. That's not a good omen going into this season. Quick side note, they've also got the worst livery on the grid, which is not going to help.
It's awful.
It's terrible. But forgetting that, yeah, Russell will do well. He might do very well if, say, Bottas and Hamilton are unavailable for a Grand Prix, and perhaps Russell needs to step into the Mercedes seat as well. So taking that into consideration, he could get up to 16th or even higher. But yeah, another poor season for Williams, I think, overall.
And what about you, Callum O? George Russell, is he going to be hanging kind of at the back again of the grid and struggling to score points on a Sunday? Because he's never struggled on a Saturday. We all know that, this Mr. Saturday nickname that everybody seems to give him. But on a Sunday, he seems to struggle. And do you think he's now going to be trying to close up to the back of that midfield pack a little bit more, Callum? Or do you think he's still going to be lagging behind at the back?
Well, I think if it's up to George Russell, he will be closing up to the midfield because he's that good of a driver. I think that the Williams will have limitations that will prevent him from doing so. He's already come out and said the car's it's almost like a yo-yo. It's up and it's down, and there'll be certain tracks where they can maximise and look to score points, which I predict they'll do. I do think we'll see George Russell in the points in the Williams this year. However, I think the best car in that Class C is the Alfa Romeo, and that will prevent Russell from scoring points maybe as regularly as he'd like to in the Williams.
Now, I think you're all going to agree with me. Haas, Williams, Alfa Romeo, they're going to be in some sort of order in their constructor standings. And we will come on to our constructors predictions at the end. And those drivers are probably going to be in those, 15th, 16th and below. Now, the ones that gave me the biggest headaches was this chunk of midfield teams. The amount of times, I crossed one out and went, no, he's going to go there. No, I crossed one out, he's going to go there. The amount of times I changed my mind about these midfield teams was unbelievable. So we're going to talk about AlphaTauri, Ferrari, Alpine, Aston Martin, and McLaren. We're going to talk about AlphaTauri first. Pierre Gasly, a driver I think is very underrated, and I think we started to see that towards the back end of last season with his win in Monza, holding off Carlos Sainz just about. Joshua, what do you think about Pierre Gasly? Where is he going to finish in the championship? I've gone for an ambitious and optimistic 11th for the Frenchman.
I don't know. I'm not Gasly's biggest fan. I don't know. I've not really sort of felt that sort of connection to him as I have with other drivers. I think you look at I think I've gone 10th. Again, he's won a Grand, he's done well. He won a Grand Prix. So you look at him and said he should do well. He's probably the number one driver in that team again, with a rookie coming in. So I think midfield is fair, 10 or 11, either of those two.
And Callum O, would you agree with that? Pierre Gasly around that kind of 9th, 10th, 11th mark, or do you see him progressing even higher?
Yes, I agreed with you exactly there, and I put him down in 11th. In the AlphaTauri, looks like a really interesting car this year. It's one of the shocks of testing. However, that midfield is going to be so close. And I think for Pierre Gasly to break into that top 10 would really prove how good he is. I think he was great last season, the season he needed after his poor 2019. So I think another season, if he can get around the 10th, 11th mark, he could be looking at a move up the grid.
And then Callum, the interesting question I want to ask you is, I think you'll probably say no, and I think maybe the other two would say no as well. But does Pierre Gasly still have a chance of getting back into that Red Bull seat, or do you think, after this year, he's got to earn himself a seat somewhere else? Because obviously he'll have been at AlphaTauri for a couple of seasons. Do you think he'll ever get that promotion back to Red Bull, or do you think, they've kind of seen enough and he'll have to look elsewhere maybe after this season?
Well, I definitely think he could get back into the Red Bull lineup for sure. Big question is, will he want to? Does anyone actually want to be Max Verstappen's teammate? I certainly wouldn't want to be. If anyone's watched Drive to Survive, Christian Horner is all about Max Verstappen. He doesn't care about the other driver. He doesn't care about Sergio Perez or Gasly or Alex Albon. He doesn't care about that lot. So if I was Gasly, I'd just do the best job that I can with AlphaTauri and just try and win a seat at another team. I don't know what teams might be looking at him. Maybe Alpine with the French connection there, perhaps. But yeah, if I was Gasly, I'd just do the best job that I can and hope to get a better seat somewhere else.
I think the rumor is kind of that he would go to Alpine. Alpine seems to be quite interested with him. Obviously, you've got that French connection there. And Esteban Ocon, we'll get onto a little bit later, is a driver that I don't particularly rate that highly. And he's under a lot of pressure this season, especially to keep his seat against, one of the greatest in Fernando Alonso. But we'll come to that in a minute. Let's talk about his teammate, Yuki Sonoda, the Japanese driver, who seems to have this unbelievable progression through the youth ranks, through Formula 2, Formula 3, all these, different series, Asian series that he's come through as well. He seems to have spent a year in all of them. I think Sonoda's going to do quite well. He obviously made the headlines in testing. That's probably what's kind of drawn me into him. I've gone for him in 14th in the championship, so kind of above the bottom of the midfield pack, if you like, above your Russells, your Latifis, and your Haas and Alfa Romeo drivers that are below. Callum, what are your thoughts on that?
I once again agree completely with you. I do think, really it depends on how good the AlphaTauri is. I know we'll get into the constructors later, but I expect to see it somewhere around sixth quickest. But because of just how close his midfield pack is, Yuki Sonoda won't be on the pace straight away, which is completely normal for a rookie and expected. And I just think come the end of the season, he'll find himself around 14th. He'll be on form, he'll be up to speed, but it'll be the getting used to the car that has cost him.
Joshua, we can all see each other. I said that Yuki Sonoda is going to do okay this season. You gave a little smile. You're not so optimistic for the Japanese man.
When you said you thought he'd do well, I thought you'd put him a lot higher up. I also put him 14th. So
fair enough.
So no, actually, I agree. I think he's coming into a sort of senior sport, new team. I think it's going to be very hard to compare him to the other rookies of the previous years. Going into a relatively successful team, Norris performed really well. Albon got promotion in his rookie season, so I think 14th. I think he'd take 14th now. If you say he's going to beat Kimi Raikkonen, George Russell, Latifi, and Giovinazzi, who've been in there for a couple of seasons now, will he snap your hand off?
Let's move on then. A team that haven't been performing to their potential, haven't lived up to their rich history, and that's the Italian guys. That's Ferrari. They've had a really bad season last year. The way it ended with Sebastian Vettel was just awful. And I think we all saw that on Drive to Survive as well. The way he announced that he was leaving on the same day that Ferrari were having this big 1,000th race, celebration. Callum M, let's get your thoughts on the man who's replaced him, Carlos Sainz, a driver that I really rated at McLaren, but I'm afraid, at Ferrari, it's going to be difficult for him. He's going to have to take a few years to get stuck in. Where do you see Carlos Sainz finishing in that Ferrari car this season?
I mean, it's hard to imagine Ferrari doing worse than they did last year. I guess it is possible, but I've got Sainz 9th, which might be a bit optimistic, but I truly rate him as a driver. We all saw it at McLaren and even in spells at Renault and Toro Rosso beforehand. He's got the pace. I think he's up there with the best in the grid, but again, it's all going to depend on that Ferrari. Is it going to be quick? Is it going to be terrible? We just don't know at this stage. Testing can only tell us so much. So I think 9th is optimistic, but I hope he can do well. I like the guy a lot. So
yeah, I think the Ferraris very, very close together. I've got Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. I think both have similar potentials, and Carlos Sainz maybe just behind Leclerc in his ability and where he is in his career. So I've gone for Sainz in 10th. Joshua, Sainz 10th, any higher, any lower? How's that Ferrari going to be this year?
I mean, I've put him down as 8th, but I'm sort of almost regretting that now. Sort of retrospectively looking at it, drivers below him have outperformed him last season in terms of outperform Ferrari. It was announced, you sort of think, oh, you're moving to Ferrari, historically the best F1 team. Recent years, obviously, Hamilton and Mercedes have dominated. But you look at Ferrari and they're still an incredible team. I just don't know if it's a step up. You look at how well he performed and how well McLaren performed. I've got him 8th. I've again grouped the Ferraris within a position of each other, so 7th and 8th. But retrospectively, I think that's way too high.
I think you make a really valid point there about, is this actually a step up from that McLaren car that he was in this season and the McLaren car that we look like we're going to get this season, which looks to be very similar and maybe even just a little bit quicker than last year. Callum O, his teammate Charles Leclerc, how is Sainz going to come up against him? Because you look at that and you don't think Leclerc's number one driver or Sainz's number one driver. Obviously, Leclerc's been there longer, has the longer term contract. How are those two going to do against each other?
See, I'll start this by saying I do massively rate Carlos Sainz. With that in hand, I think Charles Leclerc will be the clear number one Ferrari driver. Not even in terms of just on paper. I think on the racetrack, he will be ahead of Carlos Sainz. I've gone for Carlos Sainz in 10th, and I felt right when I wrote this, and the more I look at it, I maybe think I've been overambitious, but I've gone for Charles Leclerc in 6th. And that's not because I believe the Ferrari car will be anything special this year. I just think Charles Leclerc is that good of a driver. He dragged last year's car, which was dreadful, onto the podium twice and into, was it 6th in the standings behind Ricciardo and Perez? So I think Carlos Sainz will have a decent first year at Ferrari. It's definitely a step back from that McLaren. And I think Charles Leclerc will have a strong year in the Ferrari. but whether the Ferrari car is a strong car is yet to be seen.
Yeah, I've kind of made my predictions, maybe judging a little bit too much last year's car and not maybe looking at this year's car as much. So I've gone for Leclerc in 8th and Sainz in 10th. Callum M, what do you think? How are Ferrari going to perform this year, especially Charles Leclerc in particular?
Well, I have Charles Leclerc 8th as well. I think they're the hardest team to predict out of all of them. Based on last season, they should be probably a lot lower on our estimations. But as I said, can Ferrari get much worse than they were last season? But as you said, Leclerc and Sainz, two of the best drivers on the grid, in my opinion, and they'll drag that Ferrari up the pecking order if they need to. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to see how they do.
Just quickly, do you think it was just the car that contributed to Ferrari? Because it just didn't seem like a good atmosphere around the team with Vettel leaving and sort of, like you said, the way he announced it, this sort of atmosphere around that. It almost seemed like almost a season of, we'll say what happens and then we'll rebuild next year. For Ferrari, it's sort of like they sort of, if they knew he was going, they're not going to sort of be that up for it. I don't know. I don't know if that dynamic, and I think these two will clash as well. I think there'll be a lot of big personality between those two. Like you said, the fight for the number 1 seat, and I reckon they'll crash on track at least once.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting between those two, isn't it? Because, Carlos Sainz had this really good relationship with Lando, didn't he? And now he's coming to this new team completely fresh, doesn't know anything about them. So that's going to be something definitely to keep an eye on throughout the season. What are you going to come in there, Callum? What do you reckon?
You've got to remember, Ferrari are historically a one-man team. You've got to look at Schumacher and Irvine, Schumacher and Barrichello, Alonso and Massa, and then we saw what happened with Vettel and Leclerc in 2019 when they crashed into each other at Brazil.
Yeah.
So as you said, we've got two big personalities. There's going to be a crash at some stage. I'm looking forward to it personally. Not a big Ferrari fan myself, but I'll be interested to see who emerges on top. Probably Leclerc, because I think he's the better driver, and he's obviously the Ferrari Academy driver as well. So we'll have to wait and see.
Moving on then to a former Ferrari driver, Fernando Alonso, who is driving for Alpine this season. For those of you that don't recognise that is obviously they were Renault last season, rebranding themselves as Alpine this time out. Fernando Alonso, he's back in Formula One. He was fed up of it pretty much. That's kind of the impression he was giving us last time. He's back this time. How is he going to get on? It's going to be an interesting one. I can't see him having the best season in the world. I don't think he's going to be in the top 10. I've gone for 12th for Mr. Alonso this season. Callum O, Fernando Alonso.
Also 12th for me. I think he came out after testing and said the Alpine was a reliable car, but it wasn't necessarily as quick as they would have hoped. And I think in how tight this midfield battle will be, that will cost them. I expect him and Ocon to have a relationship very much like the one Ocon and Perez had at Force India. It'll be tight, there'll be clashes, and I do expect Fernando Alonso to narrowly come out on top on that. And I think for him, it's a case of spending this year doing what he can and looking forward to 2022 regulations to shake up the grid for him.
Yeah, I definitely agree with it's going to be tight between those two, and that relationship is going to be an interesting watch, because I've gone for Ocon in just 13th, so just one place below him in my rankings. Joshua, Alonso and Ocon, are they going to get on? Are we going to see, like Callum said, a repeat of Perez and Ocon at Racing Point or Force India a couple of years ago?
I like to be controversial, and I think this Alonso seat's a waste of a seat.
Wow.
He's left the sport for 2 years, and he sort of comes back in with this rebranded team and sort of, I've sort of found the love for it again. I don't know how I feel about it. Sort of, I'm not saying it's a young man's sport, or a young person's sport, but you've left the sport. Let's promote youth, sort of get your academies in, sort of get some more experience. And it was great. We saw that with the last sort of race, like when Hamilton couldn't race, we sort of saw loads of, like F2 drivers, young drivers came in and didn't perform brilliantly, didn't set the world light, but they got their chance in F1, and sort of you're bringing back another veteran that You're sort of like, you've had your time, you've had your success. Let someone else have a chance. I put him 13th. I think he'll finish below Ocon, who I've got in 12th. But I'm not a fan of this. I'm really not.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's not like he's coming straight back into a championship winning team, is he? Alpine aren't going to be winning the championship this year. I think we can all quite safely agree with that, and everybody listening and watching will agree with that. Callum, what do you think about this? Is Fernando Alonso a complete waste of a seat? Should that have gone to maybe, obviously Callum Ilot's not even a Renault Academy driver, but one of the Renault Academy drivers that could have come up from Formula 2, maybe is Guan Yu Zhou is one of them?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything Joshua just said. Yet somehow in my predictions, Alonso is 7th. So I'm obviously seeing something that you guys aren't. I don't know. It just, when Alonso says something is good, it usually ends up being pretty good. And he is coming into the season with a lot of confidence. So he obviously knows something that we don't know about the Alpine team and the Alpine car. So maybe 7th is way too ambitious for me. We'll see, I guess. Ocon, I like Ocon a lot as a person. I don't think he deserved to lose his seat to Stroll that time at Racing Point. But I've got him 11th. I don't think he's going to do particularly well. But for some reason, and I completely agree with everything Joshua said, Alonso shouldn't be racing this season. He's too old now. Another driver should have got the chance. Yeah, I think he's going to do really well. I don't know why.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it? You know, I think that's really opened my eyes. What Joshua said, you know, it's a complete waste of a seat. Why has somebody not been given a chance? I was more of, you know, the old school. Oh, it's great to see him back. You know, this is probably only the second or third season where I properly followed F1, watched as many races as I can. I've always sort of followed it from afar, you know, from when I was younger. So for me, it would be the first time maybe properly seeing Alonso throughout a season compared to maybe some of you guys who know him a bit better. Moving on then, let's go to Aston Martin. Obviously, they were my favourite coloured pink Racing Point, or Mercedes, should I say. So the Aston Martin this year, I'm not a fan of the green with sort of pink highlights all over the car. They obviously had a, you know, pretty poor testing session. Quite a lot of it was spent in the garage. Let's talk first of all, before we go on to Sebastian Vettel, about Lance Stroll. I'm very much in the daddy's boy sort of camp. You know, I think he's obviously, his dad's background is an influence in him being in that team, but I still think he probably would have a seat somewhere else, and does have the ability, as he showed in Turkey last year. You know, when he put the car on pole, I think. So Lance Stroll, Callum Owen, what do you think about him? Where's he going to do? Where's he going to finish this season? I've gone for him in 9th.
But to start, I think the Aston Martin livery is the best one on the grid this year. But I feel like we've got the same predictions. Once again, Lance Stroll, 9th. So that cup of coffee is yours. But I'm not a massive fan of Lance Stroll yet. I seem to find myself defending him quite a lot. I do think he by now is good enough for F1. I don't think there should be doubt around him having a seat anymore. I feel like it's a big year for him. This is his team. It's his dad's team. His seat's not under threat, and this team is around him succeeding. I don't think he'll beat Sebastian Vettel. I think he'll be close. I mean, despite their tough testing, I think Aston Martin will find themselves 4th, just because they had a quick car last year, and with maybe not as many changes as you would normally see year to year, I think they will still have a quick car this year. But I've gone for Lance Stroll in 9th.
And Joshua, would you agree, or do you rate Lance Stroll maybe a bit more highly than me and Callum have so far?
It's an interesting one. He's not my favourite driver on the grid, and he's not my ideal podium driver. But you sort of like, if you see him up there, you're like, it could be better than someone else. Again, he's good enough. He's proved he's good enough to be in the sport, but I agree. I think it's harsh. It was very harsh to move him and drop another driver just because your dad's bought the team. I've got him in 11th, below Vettel, but you never know if they're going to sort of carbon copy the Mercedes again, or if the rebrand sort of they're trying to distance themselves. from last season's Mercedes. So 11th, not as good as last year, but just mediocre for a new team, I think.
Well, while I'm not a fan of the Aston Martin car, I am certainly a fan of Lance Stroll's teammate and the other Aston Martin driver, Sebastian Vettel. I think we are going to see the true Sebastian Vettel this year. I think he's going to come back and prove everybody wrong from obviously last year. Not that he really had anybody to prove wrong because, his car was crap. But I do think he's going to be a lot better than last year. And I think he's going to have a really good season. Whenever I've been to Silverstone, Sebastian Vettel is the enemy. Everybody's against him, obviously, because of that rivalry that he had with Lewis. And I've seen him more in the media, the way he is with people. And I've just really warmed to him as a person. And that's kind of just automatically made me rate him as a driver a bit more. So I've gone for Sebastian Vettel finishing 5th in the championship of the 20 drivers. Callum M, your eyes have widened. You're shaking your head. Talk to me.
Well, yeah, first off, the Aston Martin is beautiful. How dare you criticize it? British Racing Green always does something for me. Don't ask why. Yeah, I have Lance Stroll 10th and Sebastian Vettel 12th. Here's my rationale behind that is there's always a team that bigs themselves up in pre-season. And they always go, yeah, we're going to be challenging for podiums. We're going to win a race, maybe. We're going to be top 3 teams for sure. And they always fall short. Renault did it a few years ago. Ferrari did it last season. And this season, it's the turn of Aston Martin. If you saw their pre-season launch when they had, Daniel Craig was there, and they were giving it the big and like, yeah, this is going to be the best car ever. We're going to take it to the next level. They're not. This is flattering to deceive right now. They're going to rock up in Bahrain. They're going to finish out the points. Vettel is past it. He seems like a lovely guy. I'd have a beer with him, but he's past his peak at Red Bull. He needs the perfect car to get the best out of him, and Aston Martin aren't going to give it to him.
So Callum saying that maybe Vettel has peaked a lot earlier in his career than maybe other drivers would have, predicting him a terrible, well, not terrible, but a disappointing, I think, 12th place finish. I've gone for him in 5th, as I said. Joshua, you pulled a face as well. Talk to me about Sebastian Vettel.
Not a fan. And I don't know if that's almost like the follower of Lewis. For as long as I can remember being a fan of F1, I've been a fan of Lewis. I don't know. He's just struck me as sort of arrogant, sort of dangerous almost to an extent. You look back at a couple of years ago, and it's not a fan. Obviously, it was sad to see him struggle at Ferrari just because of the Ferrari brand as an institution. And again, it's a weird move. I think this is Aston Martin and Lawrence Stroll trying to improve their sort of standing in the sport. Since the fact, it's like you said, like Daddy's team, then we've got a serial winner here. But I agree with Callum, it's not going to work. I've got him down 9th. I think it's a better car than a few of the others on the grid, but there's no way he's challenging top 5. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. I don't know. I seem to have just warmed to him too much, and maybe I also there's a bit of sympathy in there from Ferrari. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it's because I haven't been Lewis's biggest fan over the last few years. Callum O, obviously we've had a lot of controversy. You've agreed with me quite a lot so far. I'm assuming you're going to disagree this time, or are we like-minded? Have you put him in 5th as well?
Yeah, see, I'm not that ambitious. I rate Sebastian Vettel and I like Sebastian Vettel. He's not finishing 5th. I had him down in 8th, which I still think, in what I expect to be about the 4th best car, is a reasonable place to be finishing. I think it'll be good. He needs to be in an environment a lot like Red Bull, sort of British team, do-it-yourself team with a close bond, and I think he'll get that at Aston Martin, and it's something that he's lacked at Ferrari, and I think that will help bring the best out of him. So I expect he'll finish 8th.
Okay, so moving on to the final and arguably, from what we've seen in testing, the best midfield team and the best midfield looking car this season, and that's McLaren. They've obviously now got the Mercedes power unit in the back of that car. rather than the one they had last year with Renault, was it? So Daniel Ricciardo has obviously joined them from Alpine or Renault as they were. I think this is going to be a really interesting one. I'm really going to be interested in how Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris get on. Obviously, Lando has been there, a very long time now, not necessarily in Formula One, but as kind of one of their in their youth program. So Lando Norris, as highly as I rate him, I'm now thinking after what you guys have just said, I may end up swapping Vettel and Norris in terms of their position, or maybe bringing Vettel down to put Norris up. I put him in finishing 7th in the championship. Lando Norris, British driver. We're obviously all British. We may be Lewis fans, George Russell fans. Are any of you a Lando Norris fan, Callum M?
I've yet to meet a Lando Norris hater, I'll tell you that much. He seems he's just one of the nicest guys I've ever seen in Formula One. Big question is going to be, now that he's in a more competitive car, he can't be a nice guy on the track now. He's got to start, pushing his own weight, I guess. Is he going to finish ahead of Ricciardo? No, for me. I think Ricciardo's a better driver, but I think it will be close between the two. I've got Norris 6th and I've got Ricciardo 4th. I think he's going to crack the top 4. So it might be a step too far, but with the Mercedes power, as you mentioned, McLaren should, on paper, be one of the quickest teams out there this season.
And Callum O, Daniel Ricciardo, is he going to beat Lando Norris? I think we probably all agree yes. But by how much is he going to beat him in your eyes?
Well, talking about Lando Norris, after your almost little adventure up the standings with Sebastian Vettel, our predictions are back on track because I've said Norris 7th as well. I think it's a massive year for Norris because he's been at McLaren, he's embedded in the team, which is the advantage he has over Ricciardo. I don't think he'll beat Ricciardo purely just because I think Daniel Ricciardo is that good. I think Norris is fantastic, and now they're in a car that I think is almost getting ready to challenge the front runners. I think we'll see a different Lando Norris that we saw at times last season, much more ruthless, sort of not so much a nice guy, but a better racer. And I think we'll see that this year. I've gone for Lando Norris in 7th, Daniel Ricciardo in 5th, best of the midfield for me. And I imagine it will be quite clear.
Yeah, I agree. I think just the experience and the sheer just driving quality that Ricciardo has will shine over Norris. And let's not forget, Ricciardo is 31 now, something like that. Norris is only in his early 20s and has the potential to be even better than Ricciardo by the way he started in McLaren and in Formula One. I think we can all agree that Ricciardo will do better than Norris this season. Some of us maybe think it'd be a bit more clear-cut than others. I've gone, like Callum M, with Ricciardo in 4th and Norris in 7th. Joshua, do you think they're going to be any closer or any further apart than that, the two McLaren men?
I've gone 5 and 6 as well. It really hurts to put Ricciardo in 5th because this is my favourite driver lineup on the grid, far and away. But I think the Red Bull's a better car than this season's McLaren. It is the only reason I put Perez above him. But that'd be 2 or 3 points. That would be if Ricciardo crashes out and Perez finishes above him in one race is all that's going to separate it. But this is my favourite partnership. It's not going to be what everyone thinks it is of all like friendly because they're the two biggest characters. They're two very good drivers in a good car. So yeah, close, very close.
And we've talked about Drive to Survive a couple of times already and made a couple of references to that. And we haven't seen too much of Lando in the few episodes we've had. He's more kind of been in the background of episodes. But we've seen a lot of Daniel Ricciardo, especially with that move from Red Bull to Renault. And we've seen how ruthless he is. We've seen how much, he wants to go out and get that kind of a world championship for himself. And I don't think he's going to do that on McLaren this season, obviously, but there's definitely the potential in him to do that. Maybe he's a bit past his day to do that as well. But Ricciardo is one that kind of the way he acts in front of those Netflix cameras that I'm not too much of a fan of. Let's move on then to the top two. We've got Red Bull and Mercedes left to discuss. I think we'll all agree that these are going to be the top two constructors possibly at the end of the season. Let's talk first of all about Sergio Perez. I think a man that I certainly felt very sorry for when it looked like he was going to be out of a seat. And then I saw him snapped up by Red Bull. And I'll be honest, I felt even more sorry for him having to drive that car, which seems to be Max Verstappen just seems to drive around everything that's wrong with it and somehow get a result out of it. And whether Perez is going to be able to do that, I'm not sure. If Perez can have that influence on the car and be able to develop it in the way he wants his car to be developed, he'll finish much higher than I predicted him. But I've gone for Perez in sixth. Joshua, what do you think of that?
I agree. I wasn't on the same hype train of Perez in terms of, I think the way he was treated by Lawrence Stroll was being dropped for Vettel, who had a terrible season, was poor. And again, I think Drive to Survive's really sort of shown off Christian Horner in a terrible light. Whether that's actually Christian Horner or whether it's a character, the way he treated Daniel Ricciardo in Series 1 was horrendous. Ruthlessly dropping Gasly for Albon and then dropping Albon with season and a half. It's ruthless. This was the safe bet for him, wasn't it? It was an established driver, a free agent, no links to Red Bull. It's not like you're dropping an academy driver to knock his confidence and you potentially lose him from the sport like you've done with Albon. He's sticking there for a season. If he finishes above Bottas, great, you keep him. If he completely is outshone by Max, no harm done. You bring Albon back, you bring Gasly back, or you bring in you promote another academy driver. But fourth, I think it's a better car than the McLaren, so it'll be way off Bottas and Verstappen and Hamilton.
So Callum, Joshua may be suggesting that Perez is only going to get this one season and this one season only to prove himself at Red Bull. And, if he is outshone by Max, as Joshua said, he may not get that chance in 2022. What do you think of that? What do you think of that Red Bull dynamic? How's that going to work out this year?
I really hate the Red Bull driver system. It's shameful in many ways. And we were talking about all the driving of Albon, Gasly, but there's so many other drivers they've lost through the system just because of how terribly they've worked it. Back to Sergio Perez. I love the guy. I think he's fantastic and all that. I've got him fifth, which I think would be great for him. I think he'll win a race or two, which would be awesome. I don't see him challenging Verstappen or Hamilton. Perhaps he could creep up to third ahead of Bottas and Ricciardo, but it's a new team. He's got to adjust to it. I honestly don't know if he's going to stay beyond a year. Maybe he has another year while Gasly or Albon or whoever takes more time to develop. But I think fifth is about fair for Perez.
And Callum, Max Verstappen, are we going to see maybe not a better Max Verstappen, but Max Verstappen in a better car that will be closer to those Mercedes cars this year? And will Perez be able to get anywhere near him?
I think we'll see Verstappen better Red Bull. I think that Red Bull will be such a step up from last year. Max outdrove last year's car, I think. But I think this year he won't have to because I think it looks to be a very good car. I do think we'll see a straight fight between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen for the title. Whilst I don't think Verstappen will win, I think Hamilton will take his 8th title. I think that Red Bull will be up there and that will benefit Sergio Perez. I think I put him 4th just because I couldn't quite put him ahead of Bottas, just because I still think the Mercedes will be a slightly better car. I think he'll have a season-long battle with Daniel Ricciardo and Valtteri Bottas, and he'll end up 4th.
And his teammate Max Verstappen, you're pretty confident that he's going to be challenging for that title. Are you going to agree with me? I've put him in 2nd.
Yeah, 2nd for me. I think he won't. I think it'll be a really good title fight, I hope. And that's a prediction. I think Verstappen will come a narrow 2nd to Hamilton.
And Joshua, you agree 2nd for Verstappen?
Yeah, I've put him second. I'm not sure it's going to be as close as what Callum suggested. I think Hamilton's he should drive his way to that championship with ease. I'm not saying Max is a bad driver, but I don't see him winning a world championship in a Red Bull. Even if Hamilton moves on and you get Russell or Ocon or whoever you get in that seat next year, Verstappen doesn't win a championship in a Red Bull. So he'll do better than Bottas, who I think it's his last season. Not a fan of him, but second, but off the pace of Hamilton.
And Callum M, what do you think? A Red Bull not going to be these big title challenges that maybe Joshua is suggesting and that other people are suggesting that are going to be, Josh may be saying that they're not quite going to be as close to Mercedes as a lot of people are suggesting they are. What do you reckon on that one, Callum?
Well, I put Verstappen second, but I'm wondering, should I play devil's advocate and say he's going to win now since everyone else has said he's going to finish second. Here's how I think the season will play out. I think Red Bull obviously looked very good in testing, Mercedes a bit off the pace. I reckon a bit like 2017 and 2018, we're going to see Mercedes sort of slow off the mark and Red Bull are going to look like title favourites going the first half of the season. And then Mercedes are going to come back and completely dominate the second half of the season, and Hamilton will therefore win. But yeah, I'm happy to play devil's advocate and put Verstappen top if you'd like.
At least one of us will be right that
way.
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay, moving on to the Silver Arrows. Well, they're not really silver anymore, but the Silver Arrows, Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas. Let's talk about Bottas first. We obviously had that Drive to Survive episode surrounding Russia, and we had that sort of weird sauna scene that made me feel very uncomfortable, I have to admit. But Valtteri Bottas, seeing how much he wants to beat Lewis Hamilton in that episode, I felt upset for him, and it really makes me want him to beat him this year. I don't think he will, but I found Lewis Hamilton a little bit unbearable over the last few years. Something in him has changed for me with Hamilton, and as someone that wanted him and has supported him all through my life, really. 2017, 18, 19, something has changed in Hamilton that I don't particularly like, and seeing how much Bottas wants to beat him has made me really want Bottas to beat him, and I do feel sorry for him. So I've gone with Bottas in third. Callum, Owen, what are your thoughts on Valtteri? Do you think he has the potential to eventually one day beat Lewis, or do you think Lewis will always be better than him and maybe he's not the driver that I'm making Bottas out to be?
I understand and agree when you say you feel sorry for Valtteri Bottas, because I think it must be horrible driving the best car on the grid knowing you're not going to win. Because I do think Lewis Hamilton is very clear of Bottas. I rate Bottas, but I don't think he's got a world title in him. I think Lewis. I understand what you mean with Lewis Hamilton, but for a different reason. I think I like Lewis Hamilton. The only problem I have with him is he wins so often that maybe he gets a bit repetitive. But that's not a slight on him. That's almost an achievement. I think he'll be comfortably ahead of Bottas, and I do think this will be the last year that Bottas and Hamilton are repairing. I think one of them will leave Mercedes at the end of the year.
I absolutely agree. I can't see either of them. Maybe both of them will go. I doubt that would happen. I think it's going to be one or the other will go. Joshua, what do you think? You've obviously made it clear that you're a Lewis Hamilton fan. I've gone off in the past few years. Can't really put a reason on it. Can't really pin it down to, this is why maybe I'm just fed up of him winning all the time. What do you think of the two of them?
Hamilton's far better driver than Bottas, who I think is fortunate to be in that seat, just because no one takes that seat below Hamilton. I know, like Callum said, knowing that you'll be driving the best car on the grid, but you'll be second driver for that. He leaves at the end of this season, whether that's out of the sport or whether he's picked up by a mid-table team. I understand what you mean about Hamilton. I think it's the ambition and passion in him. He knows how good he is, and compared to the rest of the field, especially for the last however many years, 7 years, he's blown them away. He had some close battles, but Vettel's not won a championship since his Red Bull days. He didn't do anything at Ferrari in the grand scheme of things. There's an arrogance there, but he deserves to be arrogant because he's the best driver on the grid, arguably the best driver we've seen in the sport. And he wanted to get Schumacher's record, didn't he? He wanted to break all those records, and now he wants to set his own. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him for another 2 or 3 years in that seat, maybe with George Russell nurturing him on to take his place in 2 or 3 years' time. But Bottas third, Hamilton walks his championship.
And Callum M, would you agree? Hamilton for the title, Bottas not really going to get anywhere near him, same as last year?
I mean, unless I'm still playing devil's advocate, Verstappen wins. But no, Lewis Hamilton's definitely winning this title. Valtteri Bottas third, about fair. I'm sorry, Matt, you're going to see Lewis Hamilton in the sport for the next 2 or 3 years minimum. He's got no reason to stop. He's in the form of his life. I don't like making like talking about like GOATs, like greatest of all time, but he's definitely up there. He's definitely top 3. With, I would say, Schumacher and Fangio and Senna. That's top 4 actually. This is why I don't get into those debates because I can't decide. But he is one of the best. I don't think he's going to run away with this title like he has in the last 2 seasons. But he's going to win it, no doubt.
Yeah, I think I agree that he is going to win the title. And yeah, like I said, I can't put something on it on what it is that has put me off him, but maybe it probably is just because he just can't stop winning. So we've pretty much all gone for Hamilton for the title. We've pretty much all agreed on kind of the bottom drivers. So we've pretty much, apart from Sebastian Vettel and my prediction, we've all put all the drivers in a similar sort of place. Let's move on to the constructors. I think that's going to be very similar to what we've talked about. Somebody said earlier, I can't remember, it was one of the Callums, I think, said that Haas have the worst car on the grid. I've put Haas in 10th. Callum O, who have you gone for finishing at the back of the pack in terms of the constructors this year?
I agree with you. Haas will finish 10th. I just think they're a step behind everyone else.
And I think there's no bad thing about that, right? Surely, because, like Gunther Steiner has said, that he wants his drivers to use this season to develop and get ready for 2022, Josh.
Yeah, if Haas finish anywhere apart from 10th, that's massive success. I mean, if you finish 10th with a brand new rookie lineup, I mean, even if you score a point, that's no mean feat. 10th, yeah. I mean, they've got the worst driver on the grid, and then someone just hovering above those bottom 5, really.
And Callum M, the 2 teams above Haas, we've kind of all agreed that Williams, Alfa Romeo and Haas are going to be kind of at the back of the pack this year. I've gone for Alfa Romeo in 9th and Williams in 8th. Would you agree with that, Callum M?
Bold by saying Williams weren't going to finish last, but it turns out everyone thinks that. So, I thought that was my wild prediction. Williams weren't going to be last for a change, but no, because it turns out everyone agrees with me. Alfa Romeo 8th. I still don't think that Williams car is very good, but I think they'll have a bit of luck this season, finish 9th. Alfa Romeo get, 5 or 6 points for a couple of decent finishes. So.
Okay, so let's have a look at the midfield then. I'm going to go from 3rd to 7th and just kind of give my order and a couple of reasons why. Then we'll go around it and see what everybody else thinks. So for the midfield battle, I've gone with AlphaTauri in 7th, Alpine 6th, Ferrari 5th, Aston Martin 4th, and McLaren 3rd. We'll go back to Joshua. Your midfield ranking, please.
I'm so torn. I put AlphaTauri 7th. I think Sonoda will bring them down. Then Alpine 6, Aston Martin 5, Ferrari 4th, but that's only based on my rankings. But I think between Aston Martin and Ferrari, anything could happen. I think AlphaTauri and Alpine are just a bit off them.
And Callum Owen, this is going to be unbelievable if you've predicted the same midfield constructors orders. So I'll just remind you of mine. McLaren 3rd, Aston Martin 4th, Ferrari 5th, Alpine 6th, AlphaTauri 7th. Have you agreed with me yet again?
So close. So close. I went for Alpine in 7th. Just, I as I said before, reliable, but not necessarily fast. AlphaTauri in 6th. I think it looks like they've got a good car. I think having Sonoda as a rookie could hold them back, but I think conversely, Pierre Gasly in the form of his life will bring them forward. Ferrari 5th, just because it's so close. And I'm kind of now just ranking who I think the best cars are to get to my constructors order. So Ferrari 5th, Aston Martin 4th, and then McLaren a clear 3rd.
Callum M, any changes for you?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I think Aston Martin are going to struggle. I have AlphaTauri 7th, Aston Martin 6th, Ferrari 5th, Alpine 4th, and then McLaren 3rd. So, yeah.
Cool. I think there's going to be a lot of nodding as we go around for this one. We'll start with Callum Owen again. Your top 2, Mercedes for me at top and Red Bull in 2nd. Agreed?
Yeah, shockingly, we've agreed, but I don't think that one is so much of a shock. Red Bull, definitely not the favourites after testing. They look the strongest after testing. I don't think necessarily Mercedes is sandbagging, but I do think they will be the top team this year.
And Callum M, obviously, you're kind of maybe suggesting that Max could go and win that title. Do you think Red Bull can win the Constructors' title, or do you think Mercedes are going to top it?
The devil's advocate in me says Red Bull are going to steamroll this, but no, it's Mercedes. It's Mercedes to lose at this point. I'd love to see another team win. Not that I don't like Mercedes, but it's getting a bit boring now seeing them win every year. So, yeah, I'm all for a different winner, but it's Mercedes to lose.
And Joshua, I assume nothing else really to add?
No, again, I said what I had to say. Really, I think Mercedes walk it, and I think Hamilton walks. Not walks in terms of it's going to be hundreds of points, but I think he's clear, and I think you'd rather be 1 and 3 than 2 and 4, obviously. So, although Bottas isn't on this level, that car is better than what Perez has. So, Mercedes 1, Red Bull 2.
Okay, we've had a bit of fun. People have, you guys have taken the mick a little bit with my Sebastian Vettel prediction, thinking that's a little bit wild. Aside from everything we've just said, let's not try and repeat any of the predictions we've given. Let's give a wild prediction, something that's really unlikely to happen, or maybe is likely to happen, but there's quite an outside chance of it happening. You're all smiling, so you've all probably got something, quite funny to say. Let's start with Callum M. What is your wild prediction for the 2021 Formula One season?
I don't know if this is necessarily funny, so sorry to be a downer here, but I'm going to say that a lot of races are going to be cancelled or postponed from the original calendar that we have now. This calendar is way too ambitious for my liking. We've already seen Australia pushed back to the end of the season. Are we really going to go racing in some of the countries that they put down? They've got this new street circuit in Saudi Arabia, which, by the way, looks terrible.
Yeah.
Yes.
We could do a whole podcast analysing why it's a terrible circuit.
That's next week's episode sorted.
Yay! But no, I'm going to say minimum 6 Grand Prix are going to be heavily postponed or cancelled outright this season. Sorry to be a downer, but it's the truth.
That's fine. Fair enough. We said wild, and it's quite a sensible thing to say, actually, because it's impossible to predict what's going to happen in the world over the next year. Hopefully, we'll be sat here in a year's time, and things hopefully will be a bit more normal. So it's a fair assumption to make. Let's go to the other Callum Owen. Any wild predictions from you, please?
I don't know if it's in my head. It makes perfect sense. I don't think that means it's likely that Gene Haas will sell Haas to Dimitri Mazepin for 2022. I just think you can see, especially in the Drive to Survive, I almost feel sorry for Gene Haas because he just sounds fed up. And There's a struggling team, and I think he'll look to cut his losses. Dimitri Mazepin will be there. Wanted to buy Force India when they went bust and couldn't. I think now he's involved with Haas now. I think for 2022, we could see Haas fall off the grid to be replaced by whatever Dimitri Mazepin decides to do with them.
Interesting one. So 2 off-track assumptions at the minute, and I think I agree with Haas there. You see him again in Drive to Survive. He's always just sort of stood there, just looking a bit down and like, do I really need to be here, sort of thing. So Joshua, are you going for an off-track wild prediction, or is yours on track?
No, I've steered the curve and taken it back to the track. It's more wishful thinking than bold predictions. That Daniel Ricciardo is going to win at least one race. I just really like him, and you never know. Lando got a podium. Maybe the Red Bull collapse and Hamilton gets another penalty and Daniel storms the victory. But again, wishful thinking. But you never know. McLaren look decent, so fingers crossed.
Okay, and my final one is on the track. We never like to see accidents happen. Obviously, in Formula One, we had some bad ones last year, one in particular. But I would, without any injuries or anything, I would quite like to see Lewis Hamilton and possibly Max Verstappen. I've written Valtteri Bottas, but it's just come into my head. I would like to see Lewis and Max sort of hit each other, and for both of them to go out, or maybe. It would be quite funny to see Max go on and win the race, or Lewis to go and win the race, and see how the other one does. The other one that came into my head as well, I slagged him off earlier. I said he was a rubbish driver, but I've also given Antonio Giovinazzi a podium. So if that's something
that is bold.
You love it. So if Antonio Giovinazzi finishes on the podium, I will be putting this clip all over Twitter, Vavel.com, everywhere over at the end of the season. So cool. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us. It's been a fantastic conversation. I hope everyone that's listened along has enjoyed it as well. All of us are kind of journalists. We're looking into F1. A couple of us do football and other kind of stuff as well. So yeah, make sure to go and check out all of our work that we do over on Vavel.com /motorsports, I think is the right sort of link for that. We're also on Twitter as well. If you go and head over to @F1Vavel, there are 2 F1 Vavel accounts. One of them isn't active, so it's important that you go and look at F1 Vavel. That's pretty much it for me, unless anybody else has got anything to add. Thank you very much to everyone for listening, watching. Make sure you follow us or subscribe to us on whatever it is that you're listening on. Some of us may be back for the next episode, some of us may not be. We're going to kind of just see who wants to do it and mix it up a little bit, so you get to hear from all of us at Vavel F1. But yeah, thank you very much to everyone that's listened. Like I said, leave your reviews on your podcast platforms and give us a follow, all that sort of good stuff. So yeah, thanks very much for listening, watching. I'm going to stop waffling on now. Here's to a good 2021 Formula One season and an Antonio Giovinazzi podium. That's all from us. Thank you very much, everyone. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.